Oh, all right. So, welcome everybody, all those online as well as those present here. And tonight we're going to have a special Pesach class because this year Pesach is unique in the way it falls on the calendar. This year Pesach starts a Saturday night, a Motzai Shabbat, which the last time it happened, it doesn't happen too often. Last time it happened was 4 years ago. The next time it will happen, where Passover starts on a Saturday night, will be in 20 years from now.
Wow.
Okay? So it's very rare setup. And while, okay, so what? It's a rare setup, but it does pose a few interesting changes and challenges in how you prepare for Pesach and how you enter into Pesach. So again, not challenges as long as we are aware of those changes, because after all, year after year, we are used to how Pesach is done. We know when to start cleaning. We know when to check for chametz, right, with the candle to go around the house and look for the chametz around the house. And then we know when to burn the chametz on the eve of Passover. We know about the selling of the chametz and what the deadline is for that and things of that sort. So this year is going to be different. Also, the fast of the firstborn, for those that are firstborn and fast this year, is going to be different. Usually it's on the eve of Passover, and this year it's going to be happening earlier. Okay, so that will be different. Come on in, come on in. So nice to see you. Okay, will you pass a piece of
Yes,
paper and
yes.
pen? Hey, the cousins are here. Okay.
What about the firstborn?
So we will cover everything. I just want to first give an overall view of all the different things that we're going to talk about tonight that are different, and then we're going to drill to the detail level. So far, we just briefly, I literally started a minute ago, was the fact that it's a unique setup this year, and a setup like this is not going to happen again for another 20 years, to have a Passover start on a Saturday night. And to add, what I didn't say is that the second year the Jewish people left from Egypt, not the first year that it happened, but the second year, it was the same setup. And also the first year they entered into the Holy Land was the same setup, that Passover came in for them on a Saturday night. So things that are going to be different that we're going to review are, first of all, the firstborn fast, right? The fast that we usually have for all those that are firstborn or those that have a firstborn child, which usually is on the eve of Passover. It's going to be happening earlier instead of normally would be on a Saturday. So, well, can't fast on a Saturday. That doesn't go unless it's a Yom Kippur. So, and then you do it earlier. Well, it's on a Friday, and that's before Shabbat. You can't do that either. So it's going to be happening on a Thursday. Okay?
And what do you
And
mean
then-
with firstborns? I'm not firstborn. But
Then you don't need to fast.
Oh,
Yeah.
So
then
the
you don't need to
firstborn,
fast.
but if it's a girl,
No, it's a firstborn boy because that was the decree
I'm the
on
firstborn
the
boy.
firstborn boys in Egypt. So then it applies to you. So you would have to fast on that day, and we're going to review that. But first, before we dig into that, how to deal with
first
it,
time I
let
hear
me
this.
just add all the other things that we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about the search for the chametz, the bedikat chametz that usually happens. It's going to be happening earlier. We're going to talk about burning the chametz that you find this year. It's going to be happening earlier than normal, as well as the sale of chametz. It's going to happen earlier. Usually we have a deadline by when the chametz could be sold, but this year, it's going to happen earlier because obviously on Shabbat cannot be a deadline for selling of the chametz. And furthermore, as you may recall, on the eve of Shabbat, of the holiday, we burn the chametz by a certain time. So yeah, we're going to do it earlier, and you have to stop eating chametz on the eve of Passover, right? Which is going to happen this time on a Shabbat, which will be a little bit of a challenge because, what do you mean? It's Shabbat, we have to eat, and we have to eat properly. So how are we going to do this? So we're going to go through all of that and figure out how to tackle everything that needs to be done. So far, obviously, already the feel that you got is that you need to be prepared earlier. Okay, so get going with your shopping, get going with your cleaning, and everything else that needs to happen. So stop number one, the fast of the firstborn. All those that are a firstborn from the family, if they are obviously a boy. If a girl was born first, then they're not the firstborn. So they would need to fast. Or even if you're not a firstborn, but you have a son that is a firstborn. And so then obviously when he's a child, he's not old enough, then the father fasts on behalf of the son. So that fast, which normally would happen on, if this was a regular setup, the day before Passover starts, which would be a Saturday this year, but fasting on a Saturday is a no-no. So we try to do it earlier. Fasting on a Friday is a no-no in honor of Shabbat. So therefore, it's going to be happening on Thursday. And there is two ways to deal with this fast. One, traditional. You fast. Starts in the morning, and it finishes when it gets dark. Okay, when it gets dark, that's it, the fast is over. So it's not a 24-hour fast, it's just from the morning till night.
You fast with water too, no water too?
Correct, no water, no food. We talk about, of course, if the doctors allow, because if somebody needs to take some medications, and because of the medications, they need to have some water with it or food or this, that all becomes exception to the rule. So we're just talking about if everything is just regular, you could fast, no problem, then great, that's on a Thursday.
So,
The good news is that there is a second way to deal with that fast, and that is, being that this is not one of those fasts like Yom Kippur or the fast of Tisha B'Av, the 9th of for the destruction of the temple, is not so strict. So this type of fast could be considered done with if there is a particular celebration going on, a mitzvah celebration that day. How do you, what was that?
It was a birthday, so.
Ah, cool, okay. But although you are full of mitzvot and you're very special, we would love to celebrate you, but that doesn't qualify. What does qualify, for example, is if there is a Brit Milah, or if somebody is finishing a tractate of the Talmud, and they do it in your presence, they finish learning that entire volume, and now in celebration of that, everyone says L'chaim, and you are obligated to say L'chaim and break your fast, and your fast is considered as though you have done it. You don't need to redo it. So traditionally, especially for this fast, what we do when it's on the eve of Passover, Passover is a hectic time. Imagine coming to the Seder, fasting and starving and thirsty, and then you drink the 4 cups of wine, right? So normally what we do is we try to make sure that there is a siyum of a finishing of a tractate so that you could be done with the fast. So that's what the best solution is for that day. So on that Thursday, prior to Passover, just make sure that in the morning you are in the synagogue so that there could be a siyum, a finishing of the tractate, and voila, you don't need to fast.
What time?
So we will discuss, each place could have its own unique prayer time. So we will discuss that. It's a prayer time if you want to know, and I'll tell you where we're going to have the prayers. We'll start at 7 o'clock, okay? Now, the interesting thing is, what happens if somebody forgets to fast that day? Because they're not used to it. They normally fast on the eve of Passover, and for some reason, they didn't go to Rabbi Danny's class, and they didn't realize the fast is on a Thursday. The good news is that this year, this person could make up for it by fasting on Friday, or listen to a siyum finishing of a tractate on Friday, so you don't need to fast. Okay, why? Because we're a day ahead. Everything is a day ahead. So that's as far as the fast on Thursday. Any questions on that?
Well, the reason I ask is like in today's marriages and first marriages and second marriages, it can be a first to one parent and a second to the other.
Well, a first to one parent, I get it.
Yeah,
The second will become irrelevant, right? As long as it's a first to the firstborn of one parent, then you're in, right?
First come, first.
There we go.
well, it's
There we
a
go.
different situation with mine.
Right. Okay, I hear you.
He's my second, but he's my goyish husband's first, so he doesn't have to fast.
Okay. No, so he does not have to
Okay.
fast. No, it goes after you, and you don't, and he doesn't have to
To
fast.
fast.
So my
Alright.
sister is older than me, but I'm the first boy, so I'm the firstborn.
I know in the Middle East being the first boy is a big deal, but in this case, sorry to tell you, somebody
You're
beat you
the
to being
second.
born first. Your sister is number one, so,
Like the oldest.
And what
Yeah.
about my situation where I
So
found
do I
out
have
I
to
do have
fast?
another boy, and then, and Ariel is her firstborn, but it's my second.
Arel is required to fast.
To fast.
Yes.
And I have to fast too, right?
No,
No.
you're not the firstborn.
You're not the oldest.
He's not ready to accept it.
My sister have to fast?
No,
she's a
only the
girl,
boys.
she doesn't.
Only the
No.
boys.
Okay.
Okay, good. So moving on Thursday. Now we go to Thursday evening. It gets dark and it's time for Bedikat Chametz, for searching of the Chametz, which normally would happen the night before Passover. But this time, the night before Passover is Friday night. Can you take a candle and walk around Friday night?
No.
You cannot do that on Shabbat, right? And everything else that pursues. So therefore, the Bedikat Chametz will happen on Thursday night. Go around with your candle, and if you're petrified of a candle, then okay, use a flashlight or something. But the candle is really the best way. Just be careful with fabrics and curtains and beddings and things of that sort, and search the entire house. And you search the entire house, even the rooms that you're going to be designating for eating on Shabbat. So I'm taking a break from that to explain this. Shabbat is still not Passover. So on Shabbat, you're going to be eating at least some chametz, right? Because you're going to make hamotzi, and you have to have some bread.
But
Which-
don't you make it with a matzah?
No.
Oh,
So here is the catch. You can do it. You cannot do it on a matzah. So first of all, the custom of Chabad is that already a month before Passover, you don't eat matzah. Okay, so that you're ready and excited about matzah before Passover. And even for those that don't have that custom, already a day before Pesach, they don't eat matzah. So you can't use matzah for that purpose. But what you do have to do is have some chametz that you're going to use for the meal of Friday night and the meal of Shabbat day. And we're going to get to more details about that. But meanwhile, going back to the checking for chametz, I want to point out that even the room that you're going to be using for the meal on Friday night, for example, or Shabbat morning, where you think you're going to have some chametz, even there should already be cleaned up before and check for chametz. When you do the checking of the chametz, bedikat chametz, Thursday night, you do that, okay? So you do that, you gather all the chametz, and you know the custom that we have according to Kabbalah, that you take 10 pieces of chametz and you wrap it and you put it in different places and you look for it. So you give it to somebody else to hide. If there's nobody else, you hide it yourself and then you look for it. And with any other chametz that you find, and you take it all, you put it in a bag. And now you have the chametz that you have found. Beautiful. And at night, after you finish the checking, you say the special prayer, which is there in your Haggadah or in your Siddur, which is Kol Chamira. You say anything that I have now seen, anything I haven't seen, it should all be null and void and wonderful. So that's all normal. Comes Friday morning. So remember, you can't burn the chametz on Shabbat morning because it's before right? The day before Passover is Shabbat. So you do the burning of the chametz now a day earlier, on Friday morning, before the set time. Which, by the way, what is the set time in Marina del Rey for the burning of chametz? So the burning of chametz is going to be by 11:49.
So by 11:49 on Friday.
On
you have
Friday,
to
you
burn the chametz.
your hummus should already be burnt, and you stop eating. And you sell hummus. I'm sorry, now you stop eating hummus because we still have another day. But you have your hummus sold before that. As a matter of fact, you don't need to wait till Friday. You could sell your hummus tonight, tomorrow. Just fill out the form for the selling of the hummus, and you could do it online as well. Go on our website, sell your hummus, you're already done with, and it's taken care of. And then,
So what do I do with all the things, the bread that I do have?
so whatever you want to keep for after Passover, just make sure that before Friday, that time, 11:49, you have it all put away in, let's say, closet that you lock, or you put a tape on it or something, or you put it in a bag in a garage with a sign that says chametz sold, so that it's not yours anymore. That's the whole idea of making a proxy to sell the chametz for you to a non-Jew, so that you don't own the chametz. So that all should be done before. So on Friday before 11:49, you make sure that your pieces of chametz that you found are burnt, and also you already have filled out the form for the selling of the chametz. Now, when you burn the chametz, usually while it's burning, after you throw it in, after a minute or two, you open up the siddur and you say a special prayer, which basically says, I'm burning the chametz, anything that I haven't seen, anything that is there, not there, whatever, I'm just giving it up. It's not mine, it's nothing, it's like the dust of the earth, and so on and so forth. This year, you don't say that, because it's not really the eve of Passover. That you say on the eve of Passover after the burning of the chametz. Now, because of Shabbat, you have to do the burning a day before. But the actual prayer you will say on Shabbat itself, Shabbat morning. Okay?
So you burn on Friday,
Correct.
but you said the prayers on Saturday.
Correct.
By what time? Any specific time?
Yes, we're going to cover that. And that on the day of Shabbat will be the same thing before 11:49. Same time.
And what page is it on?
In the Siddur prayer books, you look in the index of where it says about the checking of chametz, it's in the index. And in the Haggadah, if you have the Haggadah for Passover, it's in the beginning of the Haggadah, usually. Okay? So that's as far as the burning of the chametz, and then the prayer that you will say the next day. So now, approaching Shabbat, what should be done? What is the challenge? Well, the challenge is a lot of the preparations for Passover cannot be done on Shabbat. You can't desecrate Shabbat to prepare. For example, let's say you want to kosherize your kitchen, right? And if you're like me, and here in the Chabad house, I come with a blowtorch, and I'm blowtorching all the metal surfaces, right? And the stainless steel sink and this and that. Well, I can't do it on Shabbat. So all of that needs to be done before Shabbat. So whether it's Friday or any time before. So you need to make sure all of that is done. And anything else that you do for that purpose, let's say if you have a new stove that you want to install for Passover. Some people have a stove specifically for Passover, like I do. Israel knows about it. The stove that we always schlep, bring it upstairs to the Chabad house, and the one in my house, all of that needs to be done before Shabbat. Preparation of the counters. All counters need to be completely cleaned out and covered with a nice, thick enough cover so that during Passover, you're not putting pots and pans and food and this and that directly on the same surface that you would normally use for chametz during the year. Even though you have cleaned very well, nonetheless.
Even if it's glass.
Correct. you still cover it up
With what? With paper?
with something thick enough that will be a barrier. So paper is not going to be good. Even thin plastic is not really recommended. For example, they have some of these big thin plastic tablecloths that they sell, disposable ones. That's not gonna last. Or even the painters plastic cloth that they sell
no,
rolls.
this is
They have different thicknesses, but the normal thin ones don't make it. But for example, the one that you are seeing right here,
Yeah.
this is more thick, and this could last longer, and if it's thicker, even better. And also, besides that, it would be advisable to also cover it with something underneath it so that you don't even see the regular surface. And in general, this has nothing to do with preparation specific for when it's Saturday night at Passover. In general, the prohibition of chametz is bal yira'eh, bal yimatzeh, which means A, you shouldn't own any chametz, and B, no chametz should be seen in your domain, even if it's not yours, which is the reason why we always not only do a thorough clean out, and if we have some chametz, we sell the chametz so that we don't own it, but we also put it away in a way that it's not going to be seen. So therefore, if you have any glass cabinets with glass doors, right? So putting a tape on the door is not good enough, even though you have sold the chametz, because now every time you're passing by through the glass, you're looking at macaroni and the bread that you're planning to use, or the cake that you're planning to use as soon as Passover is finished. So put a paper cover on the other side of the glass so you don't see it, you don't own it, you sold it, it's all done.
Is rice chametz?
I'm sorry?
Rice.
Rice depends on the custom. For Ashkenazim, it is chametz. Sephardim, there's two different groups. There are some, like for example, the Persian Jews, which have a custom of that it's not chametz, as long as it was checked before Passover 3 times. They literally spread the rice into one thin surface, and they go through every kernel to make sure there is no barley, no wheat, nothing in there. And then they take it, do it a second time, spread it, a third time. It's very tedious. It almost doesn't pay to eat rice. But, for example, some other Sephardim, such as from Iraq, according to Ben Ish Chai, they don't eat rice. They say, no, even if there is a possibility that the kernel, because in the olden days, it would be that way. Somehow in the whole sack of rice, suddenly they would find some kernels of wheat or barley or something, so therefore they stay away from it. But it's not a prohibited item in itself. So if you see somebody has it, we don't need to go crazy. Oh my gosh, it's chametz. Yeah, you don't need to judge. It's just a different minhag.
So what will we consider flour?
Well, flour is not
Flour, you mean that you would make
Bread and some things, that's chametz.
right? So you don't. Correct. Yeah, that is chametz. Yeah, that's all got to be put away.
And
Beer.
what?
beer.
I don't drink beer. So that's not a problem for me. But I
Beer
do
is
make
chametz?
things
Beer is
from garbanzo flour. It doesn't have
Right.
wheat flour.
Right. So again, now we run into Ashkenazic Sephardic stuff, and we go into the category of kitniot. And Ashkenazim do not use kitniot. So we don't, that anything that is made out of kitniot,
That's kitniot?
yeah. So then that is not permissible.
Okay.
Sephardim have a different custom. Certain things they do accept, certain things they don't. I'm not an expert in all Sephardic customs, but just a little that I know. So all of these preparations obviously have to be done before Passover, and we'll get to those questions later on. The point is that this year, because of the unique setup where Shabbat is the eve of Passover, any of these type of things, preparations, which normally we go till last second before Passover arrives, right? It's a half an hour before Passover arrives, and the husband of the house is still tinkering with, fixing the gas line to the stove and so on and so forth. This time we don't have that option. All of that needs to happen on Friday,
Okay.
right? The latest by Friday. So that's as
You
far
mean by
as
Friday sundown?
before sundown. Correct. Now, on a practical level, just a general idea to be introduced, and that is true Passover starts Saturday night. Technically speaking, on Friday night and Saturday day until 11:49, you could eat chametz, right? As a matter of fact, we just said that, 11:49 is the latest time to eat chametz on Saturday day, which, by the way, is the reason why that Saturday, the prayers in the shul will be very early and no speeches, so that we could finish the prayers, everyone has a chance to get home and have their final meal of chametz before the deadline of 11:49. So even though that's the case, and even though it's a mitzvah to have some bread, because that's how you do Shabbat, you have hamotzi,
Yeah.
and you can't use matzah, right? Because so what do you do?
Yeah.
And at the same time, you already did your bedikat chametz.
Right.
You already got rid of all your chametz. You put away all the chametz. So what are you going to make hamotzi on? So what you do for Shabbat, for Friday night and Shabbat day, is that you will, to begin with, prepare a very small, just enough amount of bread that you need to eat for Shabbat, so that you don't end up with an excess, with an abundance of extra bread, but you will have enough to make a hamotzi on it. Okay? Even though you are allowed to have generally chametz Friday night and Shabbat day until 11:49, the most practical way to do this is that other than the hamotzi, the bread that you're going to have for it, everything else should be Pesach food. Because obviously, practically, you already have prepared your kitchen, right? Everything is already ready for the Chag, because you can't do anything once Shabbat comes. So if that's the case, to begin with, prepare all your Shabbat food to be also already cooked with Passover ingredients in Passover pots on your Passover stove. It's almost like you brought in Passover a day earlier.
So technically, like you would have like a table, and all of it will be like Passover dishes,
Right.
food, all of that. But then you have a little plate of bread from Mutzi.
Excellent question. So how do you deal with the table if
Yeah.
everything is Passover? How do you have the hamotzi? So here is a couple of practical suggestions. To the extent possible, anything that comes to the table for you to eat, coming out of the kitchen, have it on disposables. Disposable tablecloth,
Yeah.
disposable paper, disposable cups. As far as your bread, first of all, try to get something that doesn't make crumbs. For example, pita bread. Pita bread is fine for hamotzi, right? As opposed to regular challah, which becomes little pieces and gets all over the place. Second of all, this bread, pita bread, should be just enough for what you guys need, and you could put it in Ziploc bags. So everybody will just take from the Ziploc bag, eat a little bit of the hamotzi. Very good. Don't get crumbs all over the place, all over the house, all over the floor. Once you finish the meal, just take all the disposable tablecloth and the disposable
Plastic.
dishes, and you get rid of it in garbage. And any extra crumbs that you end up with, or any extra bread that you have in your plastic, we're talking about Shabbat day, right? Because Friday night you could still have chametz, not a problem. You have extra bread, you could zip the bag and keep it for the next day, somewhere safe, away from kids, and away from your pet, so that your pet doesn't get to it and get it all over the place. And But then comes Shabbat day, and let's say the time is approaching, the deadline by which you cannot have chametz anymore, but you still have some bread left over, okay? Hopefully it's not much. And what you could do is just take it and flush it down, either in the sink or in the bathroom. Let it go. Just get rid of it, okay? If it's an abundant amount, then that gets a little bit problematic. Hopefully, it will not, you get it into smaller pieces. It won't clog the sink or the bathroom. There's alternative ways of, if you have a neighbor that is not Jewish, you could just give it as a gift away to them. If, well, here it's not like New York where you could carry outside on the streets and in the alleys, but otherwise you could also dump it in the garbage bin that the city is going to come and take. So now it's their problem, not yours. It's no longer your chametz. But best is that to begin with, just keep enough of hamotzi, of bread, just enough for the 2 meals that you eat. Everyone eats a little bit, and that's it. The rest of the meal is just regular Passover food that you have cooked, chicken and meat or whatever, right? Potatoes.
So what are you going to do for the kiddush?
So for Kiddush,
On
still
Saturday?
on a wine. What's the problem?
No, but what about our meal here?
Oh, you're talking about on Shabbat in the Bet Knesset?
Yeah.
There will not be one.
there won't be?
Everyone will get to go home and have their meal. Yeah, because here it's going to be prepared already for Passover. We're not going to have any chametz anywhere.
Okay.
So yeah, so that Shabbat before
So
Passover.
when are we coming? It's this Shabbat?
No.
No,
We
2
still have
weeks.
time. We still have.
So the wine for Friday night, that would be already like Passover wine.
Most wines are for Passover.
But we can use the same wine, for example,
Correct.
on the Seder too.
Practically, if you're careful not to, for example, bring the bottle of wine in touch with the bread that you're
Right.
eating, or this and that, practically speaking, the same wine could be used. Yeah, correct. Alternatively, what some people do is, for example, they will make kiddush by their table or by the kitchenette, whatever, and which is near, let's say, their yard, their backyard. And as long as they could see the place where they made kiddush, they'll go outside in the backyard and eat the bread there outside. Once they make hamotzi, they spend 2 minutes just eating bread, trying not to make crumbs, shake themselves up, and then come back inside so that you're not bringing any crumbs into the house. Okay? A little bit odd, but it's tremendous help. So now you don't need to worry about getting crumbs on the floor. And again, once the meal is over, you're careful with gathering any leftover crumbs from the table and or from the floor. You do a quick sweep, and if there is any breadcrumbs, down the toilet, one flush, and now the city owns it and not you. It's their headache. So that's as far as that meal Friday night. Comes Shabbat morning before Passover. So as I mentioned before, we have in mind that because the prohibition of eating chametz comes early, 11:49 a.m., it means we have to be up to finishing eating by that time. So prayers will start early, and each synagogue will have their own timing as to what time they're starting. Hopefully the chazan, the cantor, will not kvetch and prolong that morning too much. The rabbi ain't going to be giving speeches, surely not long ones, and everybody will have enough time to get back and go home, to be able to make kiddush, and to be able to at least finish the hamotzi beforehand, right? And then, after that's done, before the time arrives, before 11:49 a.m. on Shabbat, we now need to prepare how we usually prepare for an eve of Passover, which is normally before that time, on a regular day, we're going to go and we're going to brush our teeth, right, and get all the chametz from out of our teeth, and so on and so forth. Now, that's a bit tricky on a Shabbat, because on a Shabbat we're not allowed to cause any wound or any bleeding. So therefore, if some people have sensitive gums, right? So, flossing might cause, or brushing might cause bleeding and things of that sort. So only if you know that flossing is not going to cause anything, that's what, because you do it constantly, you're used to it, your gums are used to it, then you make sure that you have pre-cut dental floss from pre-cut before Shabbat, and that's what you use to get rid of it. If not, you will take some toothpicks to make sure that you're getting everything, all the chametz, out of your teeth to the extent possible, and then you rinse very well, and voila, you are now kosher for Passover. You're ready to go. And as far as also your clothing, it's best really that already before Shabbat you put on your Passover clothing. And just be careful not to get any chametz anywhere on the clothing. So like this, you don't need to worry what you forgot, what you didn't forget. Practically, just be ready for Passover a day earlier. On Shabbat day, around that time of when you need to stop eating the chametz, now you will say the prayer that you didn't say on Friday when you burned the chametz, because now it's the real eve of Passover. So you will go to the prayer books or to the Haggadah, you open up to the beginning, and you will say, it's 2 lines, Kol chamira v'chamia, any leavened, ingredients that I have seen or haven't seen in my domain, let it all be null and void and like the dust of the earth, and boom, it's no longer an issue. So again, if you're going to do the practical advice of having Passover food for already Friday night and on, that means you don't need to worry about any crumbs that are chametz. You don't need to worry about leftover food that is chametz. You don't need to worry about food that is now stuck to pots and pans that are chametz that you need to wash, which becomes a practical issue because, you don't need it for Shabbat. Why are you washing it? Well, but it's Pesach coming. So it just makes life simpler. Just cook everything Passover for Shabbat. So the only thing that will be different for your Friday night and Shabbat day meal is the fact that you have some little bags of bread that you have kept. So you are eating chametz during the meal, but you don't need to worry about the fallouts if you were cooking chametz for Shabbat. So then after that, now comes the beautiful part, which is normally on the eve of Passover, you're nervous, you're full of anxiety, and you're exhausted, and right, you come to the seder and you're falling asleep. You can't, you can't keep your eyes open. So one of the advantages of having Shabbat on the eve of Passover is that you could rest, right? Because remember, you started prayers early, and you already had your meal, right? Before 11:49, you finished already your chametz.
Right.
And you're cooking.
Well, yeah, and there's nothing to do. There's no cooking, and so therefore, now what do you do? A whole afternoon, sleep, relax. So you'll have a beautiful seder.
And the Seder is on Shabbat evening.
Correct, Motzei Shabbat. However, before we get to that, let's bring out a different point, and that is part of the preparations that you do for Passover, including preparing the ingredients for the Seder night, the lettuce, right, the charoset that you make, and the salt water that you make, the setting up of the table, and all of that. Now it's Shabbat. So you should really be prepared. All of that should be prepared from before Shabbat. Have your charoset made. have your eggs all already cooked and so on, because you can't do any of that on Shabbat. Otherwise, comes Motzai Shabbat, which is quite late in hour, and it's time for you to start the Seder. Now you have to worry about, oh, I didn't wash the lettuce, and I got to put up the eggs, to cook them for the Seder plate and so on and so forth. So all of that should be done before, and then again, you will have a beautiful, relaxed eve of Passover. That Shabbat afternoon will be the most welcomed rest that you are going to have.
But how do you eat cold food?
I'm sorry? No,
Because
doesn't
it
need to
came
be.
so late, because it came so late.
You're talking about Motzai Shabbat, Saturday night?
Yeah. good
So
question.
once,
How do you
so
eat?
once Shabbat is over, then all bets are off as far as warming up food. So you could have a stovetop left on from before Shabbat, right, which is now on, and therefore you could go ahead and put food on it, warm it up. And,
So all
and
the
don't
warming is
forget,
like,
and don't forget the Shulchan Orech, the eating is going to come later in the Seder, right? In the beginning of the Seder, it's the Kiddush, and there's a lot of reading involved until you get to the food. So there's plenty of time for the food to warm up. So plenty of time for the food to warm up.
If you have a warming tray and you've covered it with foil,
Sure. Well, warming tray, I got that. When you say you cover it with tinfoil, what are you referring to? Why is there a need to cover it with a tinfoil? Is it a Passover warming tray?
no.
Then you need to get one. Yeah, you will not be able to use a warming tray that was used for chametz.
Even if you cover.
Correct. The idea of covering a surface for Passover works only when it's a cold surface and a cold use. But when you're talking about a heating element, then you're talking about the chametz now being transferred with the heat to other things that are touching it. So either it has to be kosherized, which a hot plate I don't think can withstand the heat of a blowtorch. It's going to ruin it. Or you just get one that is for Passover, and you have it every year for Passover. You put it away. Okay, so that's how you warm things up. Now comes Motzai Shabbat. Normally, Motzai Shabbat, after you do prayers, and Shabbat is finished, what do? You make Havdalah, right? But now, it's a Chag, it's a holiday. So how do you do it? So you do Havdalah at the middle of Kiddush. It's a unique Kiddush, which is for such an occasion. And it's called, in short, in abbreviation, they called it Yakna Haz, which means Yain, that's the blessing on the wine that you say in the Kiddush. Kiddush, the text of Kiddush. And then Ner, that's for Havdalah. You know how you say the blessing Boreh Meoreh Ha'esh? So you're actually going to say it at the middle of Havdalah, at the middle of Kiddush. And then you also say the special text for Havdalah at the middle of the Kiddush. And then at the end you say Shechianu for men. The ladies will say it when they light the candles, right? So you could light the candles and say Shechianu. So that's how it's done. And also, we don't use the besamim to smell something for Havdalah.
Yeah.
And also, even for the candles, we don't do like a regular, let's say, Shabbat, where you go with your hands, to benefit from the lights. In this Kiddush / Havdalah, it's a hybrid, you just look at the candles and you say, Boreh Meoreh Ha'esh, you say the blessing on the light. But you don't actually stretch your hand. Correct, you don't do any of that with your hand to see the fire, the shine of the fire in your nails or this and that. So you're holding the cup and you start the Kiddush, and suddenly at the middle is the text of Boreh Meoreh Ha'esh. You just look at the candle, you say that, and then the next piece, which is all about separating between, normally you say between holy and regular, ben kodesh lechol. But this time you're going to say ben kodesh lekodesh, because you're going from one holy time, which is Shabbat, to the next holy time, which is a Chag. And then you top it off with a Shechianu.
And you're gonna do it here?
So of course, we're going to do it here,
So I don't have to worry about doing it at home.
Well, correct. No, that's part of the Seder.
Yeah.
It's part of the first Kiddush of the Seder has that incorporated in it.
Yeah.
And as a matter of fact, you have to remember that you sit down and you lean to the left and you drink the wine. For men. For women, it's not obligated to, it's men that have to show they are free. Women, because of laws of tzniut, we don't force them to lean or, to be in any position that is not elegant and classy. Men, we don't care about. Go ahead. So that, in short, is how to prepare and what is different in leading up from before until the Chag arrives.
What did you say to do instead of sniffing the herbs with glycerin?
You don't.
We don't.
Don't even say it?
No. The whole idea of the Besamim is to revive the soul for the fact that the holiness of the special day has now left. In this case, you have the holiday coming. It's back to back. So we don't say.
Right.
And then the 2 days of Chag start. So in a way, it's challenging the way the setup this year comes about. On the other hand, there's an upside to it, which is it forces you to do everything ahead of time,
Yeah.
so that you and the entire family could have a relaxed eve of Passover and come to the Passover Seder, rest it up, and be able to enjoy it properly. The flip side of it is it's a 3-day Yom Tov, as we call it.
Oh,
1 day Shabbat, 2 days Yom Tov, back to back. It's a lot of eating, a lot of serving food, a lot of everything. And in Israel, of course, they never have a 3-day back-to-back because they only observe 1 day Yom Tov. So this is a phenomenon that only us outside Israel experience, to have a 3-day back-to-back.
Seder and Shabbat.
Right, correct. Okay. Any questions so far on the things that we have discussed
very self-explanatory.
on the preparation?
When is Pesach?
You want the exact date?
Yeah, please.
Okay. So the exact date will be, let me just pull up the calendar, and it's going to be on Saturday night. Saturday is the 12th of April. Okay, and Saturday night it starts. So the first day of Pesach will be April 13th, but it really starts April 12th at night.
And that's when we have the first Seder.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. So the
And do
first,
we book it on your line, online?
yes. For those that are going to be joining us, you have to just go online and let us know that you will be joining us. Correct. Okay. Fine.
We did Seder with her brother, and we had a Peruvian lady that says all the makot in Spanish, and it was really funny.
So there is a lot of ingenuities that are done in conducting Passover. You just need to make sure that the good ideas don't actually break the rules on Yom Tov. Like I know somebody once told me that they wanted to make it exciting for the kids, so they put flakes of, I don't know, white color and on the fan in the room, and so that when they talk about hail, they would turn on the fan so that it sounds cute.
Yeah.
But on the Chag we don't touch the electricity, so don't incorporate that as part of the routine. So okay, any questions?
You mean to say that Saturday night is the hog, that Sunday is no cooking with you also?
No, a Yom Tov, let's remember that Shabbat you're not allowed to cook. However, on a Yom Tov, you are allowed to cook as long as you already have a fire, a pre-existing fire. So, again, practical idea, have a flame that, let's say on your stovetop, that is left there from before Shabbat, so that you can utilize it for cooking. On a day of Yom Tov, such as the first 2 days of Passover, if it's not Shabbat, you are allowed to make a fire bigger, but you cannot lower the fire, you cannot extinguish a fire to any degree. And you also are not allowed to create a new fire.
Okay.
So therefore, multiple solutions, depending on your stovetop. Practical way, for example, in our house, we'll leave 1 or 2 flames of the stovetop on from before Shabbat or before the Chag, even if you want. And like this, on Chag, you could cook. On Shabbat, you can't use it because you're not allowed to cook on Shabbat. But comes Saturday night and Sunday, you could cook. The other thing is that if, depending on how your stove works, many stoves these days have electrical ignition. So
Right.
your only bet is to have them turned on before Shabbat. If it's not electrical ignition, it's really old-fashioned, technically speaking, you could have a fire, taken to it, as long as you had the fire from before, and turn on the gas, and now it will catch fire. So therefore, in many homes, what they do is they have a candle, like one of these yard site candles, 7-day candles or 2-day candles, whatever, 3-day candles, 7-day candles, with a fire that is burning, which then they will use that for a light, to light the candles for the holiday. And also, if they needed to light a stove. So then they have that available. With the stoves, again, it becomes tricky because what happens is when you turn on the gas in most stoves, even the old-fashioned ones, it starts with a high level of gas. So if it catches fire right away, now you've got a huge flame, but you can't lower it. You could always make a flame higher, but you can't lower it. So again, the catch would be to turn it to its lowest level and then take the fire near the burner so that it catches now a small flame. Now, if you want to make it higher, you could. Alternatively, there's always a neighbor who is not Jewish, and you could call him to come in and ask for the help to take care of what you didn't need to. Yeah, but obviously that's the last resort. You just want to be well prepared for it. Okay,
You mean, for instance, to turn it down?
correct, if there's a need to turn it down.
So you
Yeah,
can turn it up and high, but not down?
correct.
Why is that?
Because enlarging a flame is not a problem, but putting out a flame on any degree is a problem, is a prohibition on a holiday. Just like creating a new fire, for example, striking a match is not allowed. Or turning the self-ignited stovetops, to turn them on a holiday and suddenly tick, 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 and now poof, there's a new fire. That also is not allowed. Can't be a new one. It has to be a
Making
pre-existing
fire
one.
in the Bible time was not like lighting a match. They had to rub stones and walk out.
Well, whatever, but that's, the history, but now it manifests itself in this way. Okay,
was a
what
hard
other
work.
practical questions do we have for preparation this year
What
for
about
Passover?
preparation of food without having to cook them?
Which means, explain,
If you want to make a salad,
yes,
can you do it?
yes,
Okay.
yeah. Yeah, generally speaking, things that you need to do for cooking, you're all allowed to do, and holiday doesn't get in your way for that. It's really the cooking which is an issue. Yeah. What else? So let's go to now general Passover prep. Okay, this was all unique challenges for this year because it was on a Saturday night that it starts, and Eve of Passover is on Shabbat. General preparations for Passover. Any pot that has been used for chametz and during the year, even if it's a pot that you don't necessarily make, for example, pasta in it, it's always been just used for eggs. Some people have egg pots, but you have to remember that nonetheless, you put it on a regular stove, which is used for chametz during the year, or you wash it in a sink together with other dishes that were used for chametz and so on and so forth. So therefore, practically speaking, for Passover usage, all your utensils should be dedicated for Passover. Can you kosherize a pot to be used for Passover? The answer is, in many cases, yes, not all cases. However, practically speaking, it's a big headache. It really doesn't pay to do so, especially these days. In the olden days when pots and pans were expensive, and not everybody had place to store an extra pot, and they didn't have extra hundreds of whatever currency to buy the pots, so they would do hagalat kelim, which is where certain pots you could dip into boiling water and take it out, which is dangerous for those that don't know how to do it. And also, you got to know all the details of how to kosherize. There's laws involved in that. Not everybody's an expert, and so on and so forth. So therefore, the easiest, most practical thing is spend a couple of dollars, get a pot. Doesn't have to be the best quality pot. You just need it for Passover. And that's it. And then you store it away after Passover. You have it for the next Passover. It saves you so much and so many hassles. As far as your stove and oven, koshering them. So a lot of modern ovens have a self-cleaning cycle.
Mm-hmm.
With those, what you need to do is clean it up very well. Any schmutz, any dirt that has been stuck to the racks or to the wall or to the bottom, wipe it, take it, brush it. So make sure there's nothing left. And once you have cleaned all of that, and also, by the way, that gasket that is around the door of the oven, sometimes food gets stuck underneath the gasket. So you got to lift it a little bit and clean around it to make sure that everything is cleaned up. The gasket, it's like
the rubber part.
It looks like a rubber. It's around the door that it makes sure that it's sealed well.
Yes.
Yeah. So food sometimes gets stuck in that too. So, take a little toothbrush or something, clean all of that. And once it's all cleaned up, then you turn on the oven, put it on a self-cleaning setting for the maximum time that it allows. And what that does is it brings the oven to its highest possible temperature that you could have used it for cooking. And then therefore, it's now kosherized. The same way that it could have absorbed the chametz, now it becomes kosherized. That's as far as inside the oven. If the oven doesn't have self-cleaning, then it becomes more difficult because the only way to clean it is really with a torch, which is not easy. A small torch takes a long time, and you have to make sure that you're getting all the corners. A big torch is very hard to handle, it's dangerous, and so on and so forth. So again, many households opt for a Passover stove, which they move after they finish, they move it into the garage, they have it till the next year. Or some households buy for Passover a countertop.
Right.
Smaller than a regular oven, but it does the job, so they may have to cook in 2 shifts, but it's kosher for Passover. What about the stovetop? What do you do with the stovetop? Most stovetops are not stainless steel. So therefore, you can't just blowtorch it and clean it up. So then the way to do it is to make sure that you clean the surface of the stovetop very well. And you could then cover the surface of the stove. We're not talking about over the grates. We're talking about the bottom, what's underneath the grates, with tin foil, so that now nothing will touch from the surface. If something spills, it's not touching the surface of the stove. And then the grates themselves on top of they usually go on top of the flame. So those, what you could do is clean them up. And when you turn on the self-cleaning of the oven, put those metal grates also inside the oven. So now they become kosher for Passover together with the oven. And then later, take them out and put them back on this surface that you have covered up with tin foil. Of course, check with your manufacturer to make sure that you're not going to damage those grates when you do that, when you put them inside the oven. Typically, they are made for such a temperature, so it shouldn't be an issue, but you could double check. The other thing that you have to be thinking about is whether around your stovetop flames are sealed or open. Most new ovens, stoves and ovens, on top, it's sealed around the burner. In other words, food cannot fall down below the surface of the stove. Some older models, style used to be that around the burner was open, like a circle. So therefore, if food spilled, now it's gone underneath, right?
It must be very old.
And it's right, and it's hard to reach. So the point is that try to clean those. Either you lift the top of the stove if you could, or sometimes they have a tray underneath the stovetop that comes out that has all the garbage in it, or you could just take a vacuum cleaner and stick it inside the hole and clean up. Yeah, exactly. Clean up as much as you could. And again, you clean the top and you cover it with tin foil and kosherize the burners. If you can't kosherize the burners, you could always buy some new grates that is just for Passover for that stove and put them on, and you then put them away. So stove and oven is important that they should be kosherized if you're going to use them. If not, just buy replacement. Even if the replacement for Passover is not as functional, as efficient as your regular stove and oven, but pulls through Passover, it will do fine. Your pots and pans are super important. They should either be kosherized or just buy 1 or 2 pots, or just what you need for Passover to pull it through, and you don't need the headache of kosherizing pots and pans. Why? Because stoves, ovens, pots and pans come in direct heat and cooking, and that's super important for transferring chametz to the food and to the pots and pans. Other surfaces that are not for direct heat, such as your kitchen counters, right, or the island at the middle of your kitchen, or your table that you eat at, just clean them up very well, and then cover them up with 1 or 2 layers of covering, so that there's no possibility that the surface is going to come in touch with any food or anything of that sort. So don't use thin plastic to cover the counter or the table. Get something that has a thickness to it. Many people put first a regular tablecloth on it, and then they put a plastic on it, and then they tape it or whatever. So then there's no contact of chametz to that. The other area that you have to be careful about is your sink. A sink, because hot pots go in there, because hot water is used during the year. So again, it's an easy transfer of chametz in the sink and in that area. So practically speaking, the sink needs to be either kosherized for Passover. For example, if it's stainless steel, that possibility is there, that you could kosherize it with either hot water or with a small blowtorch. Don't take a big one, just a small one. But sometimes it's not a material that could be kosherized. For example, it's porcelain. Can be kosherized. So then what you do is you clean very well the entire surface and everything else. And then what you do is you go simply to a 99-cent store. You buy a rectangular, like bucket, tub, and you put something underneath it so that it's not sitting at the bottom of the sink itself, just in case the water accumulates and comes up.
Okay, I know which one.
And this becomes your new sink for Passover. Simple as that. And as far as your faucet and your handles, again, clean them out very well, because you always touch the handle and the faucet with grimy, food. So you want to clean all of that good. If you are kosherizing your sink, it's possible to do it. Let's say it was stainless steel. Then you could also, for example, pour the hot water on your faucet and the handles and do that. But if you're not doing it, then just clean the faucet very well. And the tip of the faucet, you know how you undo it, and there is a little washer and little sift in there, it sifts the water. You'll be surprised how much food is stuck in there.
In the faucet?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sand too.
Well, the sand is from the water, but what happens is there's a lot of splashing that goes on and things of that sort many times, or in the surface, and sometimes, whether it's a regular faucet or it's one of these that you pull, it comes off.
Yeah.
So now you're sticking it into the pot when you're rinsing it. So there is a lot of cross-contamination of food that goes on during the year. You'll be surprised. Just give it a look. You'll see it visually. You'll see grime stuck to that top of the faucet. So just undo it, clean it, and, if need be, get a new piece that goes in there, or don't put it back for Passover, so that you're not dealing with the chametz that was stuck there. So that's how you prepare the sink. We spoke about the stove and oven. We spoke about the sink. The counters we spoke about. The tables we spoke about. Those are the biggies. You do that, your kitchen is ready. So you make sure that you have proper for Passover utensils. Any serving spoons, any forks, anything. Gotta be something that hasn't been used for chametz. And these days, it's very cost effective, to buy just some cheap stuff that you're going to use for Passover, a new set of knives if need be. It doesn't have to be the fancy, regular knives will do for Passover,
Or plastic.
And then, as far as the general utensils, for example, in our house and in the Chabad house, we are big on using, especially for Passover, just plastic spoons, plastic forks, and plastic plates, and plastic cups, foam bowls, and just minimize your headache for Passover. There's a lot of eating, a lot of serving. It's a mechai to just toss it all out.
I was in a house.
Of course, if you are environmentally conscious, then you got to be ready to wash dishes. But
I was in a house there, Persian Jews. They had a big cabinet full of everything just for Pesach.
yeah, correct. That's the way to do it. Yeah.
I mean,
Question.
How direct can you be to your non-Jewish friend to help you?
Are you talking about on Shabbat and on a holiday?
Yes.
Okay. So for example, you're talking about, if you forgot to, turn on the light in the house, right? Or a fire was left on and it's quite big and you don't want it to be left on overnight like that. And all right, so now what do? So one of the solutions is to, go to your neighbor or go outside, find someone who doesn't get scared the fact that you're approaching them, and just tell them, first of all, ask them, are they Jewish? Because many times they happen to be, so then you cannot use them. But if not, then say, maybe you could do me a favor, we live right here, it's our Passover, it's our Shabbat, or whatever it is, and we are not allowed to touch fire or turn off this or this and that. Can you help us? That's it. So you're not,
That was my question.
Yeah, you're not
If you can
dictating.
be polite and all that.
Yeah. So you're not dictating correctly. Every once in a while, you will get somebody who, wants exact instructions. Okay, so what do you want me to do now? Okay, listen, work it through with them, and hopefully at a certain point they will catch on and they will do it.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Talking about Jews. So I'm sure here in Chabad, so people come in and they're not like very familiar with Passover or very strict or and so how do you make sure that like their pockets are clean or whatever, Um,
Right.
and, like when they come in as a visitor,
Right.
how do you like politely ask for like check yourself outside or like so to make sure that they don't
Right.
have
So
any there?
if you know who's going to come, it's always good to let them know ahead of time that, just make sure, as you know, we are very strict about Passover. So no gifts, no food items, and surely, needless to say, no chametz. And hopefully they will have enough of a sense and presence of mind that even though they're not bringing you a gift, they're not going to take out suddenly a graham cracker out of their pocket to eat in your house. Has it happened when people do that? Yes, I've had many scenarios as such when people come suddenly with something. And so first of all, you tell them, sorry, I cannot accept that.
What if you're
That's why they have
specifically
the
talking
mimuna.
about foods?
Yes.
Okay, so roses is fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, roses is not an issue.
Because you said no gifts, but you mean to say no food.
Well, so, okay, we'll get to that in a moment, but first let's deal with food. So let's say somebody comes and they say, oh, I saw this is from Israel. I figured it would be good to bring, and you're looking at it and it's a bunch of cookies, right?
Yeah.
So you say, oh, that's very sweet of you, but sorry, we cannot accept it because it's our Passover. And, but it's very sweet of you that you brought it. So, you can leave it by the door. So in other words, what has happened, put it outside by the door. What has happened is now you're not accepting it. So it's not yours. So you're not breaking the prohibition of not owning. And also you're saying, so I cannot accept it, leave it outside. So you're not looking at it either. It's not good for it to be sitting surely not at the table because it's chametz, but even to be on the bookshelf, while you're conducting a seder, to have chametz is not proper. So in a polite way, you just tell them that, you cannot accept it. And that's okay, they will understand. And that's that. You spoke about gifts, in general. So on a chag, on a holiday, food items are okay as a gift. However, other items that are not food become problematic. For example, flowers. So flowers themselves become what we call muktzah, something that you cannot touch or handle on Shabbat or on a holiday. So as a matter of fact, for example, on a Shabbat, if you receive any flowers, what do? You already put it in a vase before Shabbat, and you put it where it needs to be before Shabbat so that it could look beautiful. But on Shabbat itself, you cannot handle cut flowers and a vase and move from here and there and so on and so forth and handle it. No, it's got to be done before. So if somebody brings a bouquet of flowers on Shabbat or on a holiday, this is not food. It's not something edible that is okay for you to have. So what do? Well, if it's something that is chametz, we spoke about, you just don't accept it, you tell them to leave it outside. But if it's not something chametz, but it is still something that you cannot handle on Shabbat or on holiday, you tell them, thank you so much, that's very sweet of you. You could leave it here, and show them where they could leave it. And great. They did it. Their feelings are not hurt. Put it there. You're not dealing with it. You're not doing anything with it. And zehu, this is it. You know what I mean? So that's how those are handled. So yeah, gift giving on Shabbat and holiday is not a simple thing. Yeah, so that's why when people say, oh, you know, I invite them over for Friday night, they go, oh, what could we bring? So nothing, just your presence is beautiful. Thank you, you know. And, oh, I want to bring a bottle of wine. Okay, then you have to bring it before Shabbat, you know. Oh, okay, so fine, you know, so then, so that's as far as gifts.
And it has to have a fee.
Right, obviously, it goes on without saying that it has to be kosher for Passover. Yeah, yeah.
That's
Again,
why
generally speaking, these kind of, in a house, you usually know who's coming because they usually come with some sort of notice or invitation. So it's always good to tell them ahead of time that, do me a favor, thank you. I know everybody thinks about it, but no gifts, especially Passover. There's a lot of restrictions in our household as to what we could have, what we can have. So just come, enjoy it. I add to that, anyone that is invited to our house or to a Passover in the Chabad house, I tell them on top of that, on the eve of Passover, always, never mind this year, always tell them, take a good nap and also eat something before you come to the Seder, because it's going to take time. Otherwise, people are restless. You know, they come to the Seder and it's like, oh, when is the food coming out? So you tell them ahead of time, listen, eat something, take a nap, and we'll have a nice time this holiday. So the surprises are usually not in your home, are usually in a Chabad house setting when you don't always know who's coming. People just show up.
Yeah.
You know, that's when the surprises come in. Okay, what other questions is there?
you know, the Mimun asked some.
You're already holding for after Passover. It's okay, we'll wait for
I
that.
mean, the reason they do it because they don't go to the Muslim house and they don't invite them to them because of chametz.
Okay,
And when it's over, everybody goes to everybody.
okay. Always live and learn.
Yeah.
Good. All right, so that's in short, not in short, at length, our unique setup this year. Hopefully, we have discussed all the questions. If anything else comes up, please be in
Yeah,
touch
so
with
like
me.
if
Let me
I'm
know.
preparing food, like with aluminum trays and stuff like that, ahead of time, and then comes, I'm just thinking.
Yeah.
So then comes like Shabbat evening,
Uh-huh.
then I can just warm it and then like it should be ready for the Seder.
Correct. I mean, obviously, everything was prepared
Yeah.
as Passover food.
Yeah, right.
And
Intricate
whether you
and-
have it in pots, put away in the fridge, or in tin pans, you could prepare in such a way where warming it up becomes easy. You know, it just goes onto the stove, you know, before you start the Seder, and then by the time you comes close to eating food part, everything is warmed up, steaming hot, and you're ready to go.
So are you doing pitas on Saturday?
Pitas are a good option, especially this year,
Do you want me
even
to
though
bring the pitas?
we'll discuss that. Even though usually it's challahs, but pitas don't make as much crumbs, and they are filling, so a small amount of pita will do the job to satisfy the measurement of what you're supposed to eat when you make hamotzi. Because when you make hamotzi, you're supposed to be eating a certain amount, like 2.1 ounces of bread, so that it's considered that you ate
Everything
bread.
is so intricate.
Well, there is a halachic measurement, which is, you know, a kezayit, like a certain size of an olive, not any size, but a particular size of olive. So in the code of Jewish law, they have figured it out that size olive that we're talking about turns out to be 2.1 ounces, or I don't know how many grams. I forget, it's 30 grams or whatever it is. Yeah.
So I do the wrong thing because I don't eat bread, so I take a little piece and I just put it in my mouth.
So when you eat a little bit bread, you still need to wash and make hamotzi. The only thing
Yeah.
is that the blessing afterwards if you didn't eat enough, it becomes problematic. You didn't eat enough to thank Hashem for a meal. The whole idea of the nevarech that you say grace after the meal is the fact that you had a meal. But you didn't eat enough bread for it to be a meal.
But I did it
Yeah.
at the meal.
So many times in the yeshiva world, so that was the thing. We sit around the table in yeshiva, we eat food, and then we say, okay, everyone, let's say grace after the meal. And then your friend would say, hey, you just had a little piece of bread. You can't say the grace. Eat another piece. It would remind you. Okay, now I will, and I will say the blessing afterwards. In general, for anything that you eat or drink, no matter how much it is, you have to make a blessing before. However, the blessing afterwards, which is a requirement from the Torah, it has to have enough measurement. Same thing for drinking. So let's say you make a shahakol, you drink water. You drink just tiny one little sip. You do need to make a shahakol, but can you make the blessing afterwards? Not if you didn't have at least 4 ounces or 3.5 ounces of the drink. For that, it has to be a particular amount.
Wow.
Wow, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, Gloria and Marty, any questions?
There was discussion in Israel what prayer you put on the bamba.
Oh, on the
And he
bamba.
said it's made from peanuts. He said, Bore Pri Adama.
No, shahakol. Yes, I see that Marty and Gloria turned on their microphone. First of all, Israel wants to say.
Hello.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How is everybody?
Good, thank God.
Good. Very interesting class.
Yeah, unique setup this year. And listen, imagine that. The next time it happens is in 20 years from now. This is
I
very
hope we'll
unique.
be here.
We will all be here. Well, not here. Mashiach will have come by then, and we will all
Okay.
going to be in Jerusalem, in the third temple. So,
Sounds good.
Precious.
God willing.
Yeah.
Good. Any questions, Gloria?
No, I don't. Not that I can think of right now. I mean, I have
Okay.
a lot of questions, but
All right. I think you know how to get a hold of me or Sonia.
Yeah.
The questions that you have. So, okay. Beautiful.
Wonderful.
Want to wish you all a wonderful rest of the week and Shabbat Shalom and Chodesh Tov should be a good start of the month, which is going to be next week. And God willing, in about 2.5 weeks, it's going to be Passover. 2 weeks from this Saturday night.
Wonderful.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank
All right.
Thank
Pleasure. I'm going to
How
stop the
do I get back
recording.
to my car in the parking lot? I couldn't find a parking space.
Okay.